Leadership, leadership, leadership. Why do we have a leadership problem? Or do we even have a leadership problem? That's what I want to address in today's video. Are you ready? Okay, let's dive in. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Tope Lano channel. My name is Temi Tope. Please subscribe to this channel because we share a lot of insightful content around development, global politics, faith, life, work, and everything good, basically. So today I want to talk about a topic that affects every one of us, and it almost seems as if we have a shortage of around the world. It is leadership. It seems as if we have a dearth of really good leaders, or it seems as if compared to the 18th, 19th, 17th centuries, we don't have as many great leaders as we used to have. What exactly is the issue? Why are we not having development? So what is leadership? There are so many definitions of leadership. There are so many thoughts around who a leader is, how to become a leader. But I just want to say very quickly, in very simple terms, leadership is about influence. It's about guiding the affairs of a community, of an organization, of a nation, of a group of people so that they are able to achieve their objectives. And that goes to say that for there to be a leader in the first place, there needs to be a group of people that they are leading. There needs to be something that they're trying to achieve. There needs to be a goal. There needs to be cooperation, because the leader can't work alone. And the leader has to have some measure of control or influence over the people that they are guiding their affairs. So what exactly makes a good leader? There are a number of factors. You would have your ideas. How I have my ideas about what makes a good leader. The fact that they are elected to a position or they are chosen to lead an affairs means that, number one, they have skill, they have capacity, or they should ideally have those things. And they should be able to have some measure of knowledge and skills and expertise and know how to gather people around that can help achieve the objectives of the organization or the group of people. But some things that we can't discount are that a good leader is a servant leader, meaning that a good leader doesn't just go for their own interests. Another quality of a good leader is that they need to have foresight. Foresight because every good leader is a visionary. Every good leader sees ahead. They see problems ahead. They can tell that this will be an issue. And before things come up, they already have solutions. They already have plans in place. So a good leader is very visionary. They see almost like they see what others don't see. They plan ahead. They have foresight. Coming back to my home country, Nigeria, even around the world, it seems like many of the issues we have are things that we could have avoided years before. And it almost seems as if many of the infrastructure that we have, it was because of the generations, two generations, but what am I saying, two generations, years ahead of us. So now we're enjoying roads that Chief Obafemi Awolowo built, and he died many years ago. We're enjoying things that, were put in place decades and decades ago, and we're just, we're not really moving as we ought to. So a leader that is going to be successful needs to be visionary. Another thing about leadership is that a good leader is compassionate, meaning that they have a heart to solve problems. Like I said earlier, they are servant leaders. The difference between a manager and a leader sometimes is in the fact that leadership is really, it's beyond a skill. It's almost like it's a nature. You have to embody leadership. You have to be compassionate. You have to have a heart for what you're doing. If not, you won't stay in it for the long haul. And that's the case that we have a lot these days. I've been having conversations with people around what makes a good leader, why we're not having as many good leaders as we had in the past. And one common consensus is that people are greedy. And I dare say that it's not just leaders that are greedy. The followers are also greedy, because like they say, the leaders are a representation of the people that they are leading. The government is a representation of the citizens. So if we have people that are short of good character leading us, then it invariably goes to say that as people, we also have our major faults and we're not exactly who we think that we are, right? So again, a good leader is compassionate. Another quality of a good leader is that they have influence, they have skill, they have well, I won't say that this is exactly a good thing, but they can lead people. They can say a thing and people follow them, whether or not they like it, and they are bold enough, they are courageous enough to take actions that some people might not want, but they will still do it anyway because they know that ultimately there is a good for people. So a good leader is bold, courageous. And this happens because even in the book of Joshua, many of the things that God told Joshua was you had to be courageous, because people might not exactly always like it. And the thing about leadership is that there are some people that everybody would say this person was a good leader. There are some people that you think might be good leaders, but somebody else thinks that they are bad leaders. But despite what anybody thinks, they still go ahead to do what they think is right anyway. And that speaks about being bold, being courageous, because the times will not always be in your favor. Whether or not you're in the public sector or the private sector, you would need as a leader someone that is responsible for other people to take decisions that might not exactly be well received by everyone on the team. And that is just the price to pay as a leader, because you need to make those decisions anyway, because you need to move the things forward. Now, making those decisions doesn't mean that you are doing them for your own good, because one thing I have noticed in various sectors in Nigeria and around the world is that sometimes people take decisions that are not exactly good for everyone because of their own interest. It's a different case if a leader is taking a difficult situation because it's for the ultimate good of the entire nation, or for the majority group of people. But it's another situation when they are making these difficult situations just to benefit a certain sector of people or a certain group of people. Now that is irresponsible leader, and that is a very grave case of misuse of power. Another quality of a good leader is that a good leader just is a good listener. So you might not know everything, but are you willing to listen to the people that you're leading? Are you willing to take advice from people that even are your subordinates? Are you willing to be responsible enough to pay attention to the issues that people are going through? Do you put your ear to the ground? Do you listen out for what the concerns are? Are you trying to pay attention to some of these things? Or are you always trying to impose your own way? Very good leaders that people love, that people would do anything for. They are people that have been able to rally people around the cause because they understand what the issues are. Therefore, they use those things that they understand as a unifying force to move people towards a certain goal. Another very important quality of a good leader that I see a shortage of is that they make sacrifices. A really good leader will not be afraid to, in quotes, lay down their life or lay down something that means a lot to them because they want to achieve an objective for people. That means that they are servant leaders. That means that they are compassionate. That means that they are not in need for themselves, but for a greater good. Now, I'm just thinking, why does it seem as if generally around the world, can you even name one good leader that you know around the world? We can hardly name so many of them. There are only a handful of people that we can all categorically say are good leaders. Some people would say that, and I don't want to mention any names, but I think I may be forced to. There are debates around how the Western world have, used the media to form a certain narrative about a certain set of people, making them look like bad leaders just for their own good. But ultimately, let's look at it really. Were those people really out for the good of their people? Were they doing some things that were not very good character? Were they doing some things that were, detrimental to the rest of the world, saying that they were liberating their people? Because good leadership is not about saying revolution, just revolution. Revolution sometimes, when people say that, it means like he wants chaos. But that doesn't exactly mean that, by disrupting the system, you're going to get good leadership. Now, I want to bring this home a little, right? I live in Nigeria, and like I said earlier, I can trace some good things around education, some policies to some people as far back as Chief Awolowo. Now, Awolowo actually sacrificed for his people. He went to prison. Another example is Nelson Mandela. He was so passionate about the fight for freedom for his people, about breaking free from discrimination, that he didn't mind going to jail. He lost, and ultimately he died, right, because of some of these things that he had to pay for his people. Now, these two African leaders, they are an embodiment of what it means to lay down your life for your people, but to have a vision that transcends beyond you. They were not afraid to go through difficult times because they wanted the good of the land. It almost seems as if these days, and it's a personal, very hard pill for everyone to swallow, because are we really willing to make hard decisions for for the next person that might not even really care about what we're doing? I don't think that a lot of us are willing to pay that price, but that's what makes a good leader. Looking back at the Western world too, you hear names like Bonaparte, Napoleon Bonaparte, you hear names like Winston Churchill, like George Washington, and you're thinking that these people actually went through a lot of reforms. They put in a lot of things in place so that their people were free, and so that their people are still reaping the results today. That is what good leadership is about. Now, bringing me to my next point, can leadership really is there anything like bad leadership, or when you're a leader, you're a leader? Yes, there is bad leadership. Some people rally people around for a negative cause, and they just for their own selfish interest. We have so many examples of bad leadership today. Leadership is not about it's your turn or it's your season. If you have nothing to offer, if you're not skilled, if you're not trained, you have no business running after leadership position. And this is not just around the public sector, even in the private sector. In a small community, you have the people that always want to be ahead, but they're not willing to do the work. You have people that want to shine, but they don't want to, go through the rigor and the grit that it takes to get people to their destination. That is an example of bad leadership. Now, bad leadership is just simply taking all of this, positive skills and using it for a selfish interest, or using it to manipulate people in a negative way. Now, leaders are not exactly born, in my opinion. Leaders are raised. That means that as an individual, you can actually get skills that you need to become a good leader. It also means that everybody can be a leader, and everybody in fact should be a leader, because leadership is about influence. You have people that you have influence about, you have people that you have influence over, you have people that when you say something, they will listen to you. That is a form of leadership. How are you using your leadership skills? How are you making sure that people around you, their lives are better for it, and you're not using your abilities, the charisma that you have, the goodwill that you have with people to actually get them to do things only for your interest, but to improve their lives? There are some people that when you think about them, it just seems like these people are naturally good leaders. People just want to follow them. They have some qualities, most of it I'm sure I've already mentioned. There might be so much more, but a good leader is someone that is deliberate about also being intentional about growing, because you can't achieve excellence in one day. You can't be a great leader in one day. Where I studied in university, they had this thing called Towards a Total Graduate. They used to teach us some very, really important life skills around leadership and all of that. And leadership encompasses, not just your public life, but also your private life. And I also want to say that sometimes we give too much, or we're too hard on our leaders. And hear me out. I'm not saying that we shouldn't hold them to a high standard, but I'm saying that we don't exactly have control over their private life. So the fact that somebody had one issue in their past doesn't mean that they can't be a good leader. The fact that, there is a place for leading yourself and leading others, but it doesn't mean that a leader can be good in the public space and be bad in private. Right? A well-rounded leader actually should be good in every facet, but we also need to give people leeway sometimes. I heard someone saying recently that we hold celebrities to such a high standard. We don't expect them to make mistakes. We don't expect them to have a life. We just want them to be perfect, and that's not how life works. If you are not a perfect individual, then you can be sure that sometimes your leader would gaffe. Your leader will make mistakes. But as a good follower, and as someone that has the interest of your leader at heart, you should be able to tell them where they have erred, and also help them to go through restitution and making amends to where they can, right? Let's hold our leaders to a good standard, but also not be too hard on them. There is the debate, like I said earlier, about whether or not leaders can be raised or leaders are born. you can learn how to be a good leader. In fact, you should be a good leader. What you need to do is to be intentional about learning, intentional about knowing yourself, knowing the people that you are leading, and developing a compassionate heart. If you're not naturally someone that is caring, you can learn how to be caring. You can learn how to put people first. You can learn how to not even if you don't want to put people first, at least have their good interest at heart. That's what makes a good leader. So leadership can be learned. So you, in every space you are, right, it's left for you, and it's important that you're also deliberately trying to influence people towards a positive good. You should also be trying to raise successors. That's another thing about good leaders. Nowadays, we see that people don't want to leave the throne. They don't want to leave politics. They don't want to leave power. And you're wondering, why do we have to be there for 20, 40 years? Like, let other people lead. One of the very strong pointers of a good leader is actually that they raise successors. They raise other people after them. They're not afraid to pour in what they have learned into other people. They're not afraid to learn. They're not afraid to have a good network of people that are growing together. Like they say, if you want to go far, you go with other people. If you want to go fast, you go alone. Good leaders don't walk alone. They have a tribe of people that are like them, that encourage them and inspire them. And my question for you today is, do you think that there are good leaders in the world? Can you name any of them? The year 2024 is very important globally. We have a lot of elections happening in the United States, in Ghana, in Senegal, in South Africa. These are some really key nations that are going to be electing political leaders. But every day, besides political leaders, we are appointing leaders in our homes, we are appointing leaders in our businesses. Can we be trusted enough to even select good leaders? Can we even recognize good leaders when we see them? Because it seems like we're selecting the people that have negative interest at heart. Can we be bold enough to say, you know what, I'm going to get a group of people together and we're going to do what it takes for us to move this thing around, move this company around, move this situation around? Leadership is beyond photo ops. It's beyond, I know that I personally do really enjoy when people can communicate very well, particularly leaders. There's just something about them being able to inspire and propel you towards something through how they speak, through how they write, and how they are, they carry themselves, their courage and charisma. But it's beyond all of that. Looking back at some really amazing diplomats that we have had, right? Apart from the political leaders, I remember Condoleezza Rice, Kofi Annan, and even the current ambassador to Greece in Nigeria, Ambassador Nini Akinkunmi. They're very fantastic because beyond having that charisma and courage and just being able to really propel people, they obviously have substance. They've not just been sitting down at the desks, but they have instituted some reforms that have changed how people look at the space that they occupy. And that's one power of effective leadership. I also really admire former President Barack Obama, because he's also somebody that had from a very young age been very deliberate about making sure that he not only was successful, but people in his community also stood out. So from serving, even when it wasn't, the ideal thing to do, he could have taken a much more lucrative career at the time, but he chose to serve. And that's what I talk about, servant leadership. And you can tell that these people have something that drives them beyond themselves. They want to leave a lasting legacy, not just for themselves, but a place that makes sure that their world behind them is better for it. And I think that's ultimately what leadership is about. It's about making sure that you have a successor, you have a system in place that is better than where you came in, not worse than it. And that's really what I have to share today. Thank you for watching.